The Dalai Lama said this: although attempting to bring about world peace through the internal transformation of individuals is difficult, it is the only way. Hear that. It is the only way. Your best contribution to escalating peace is to transform yourself. You believe that. How do I know? Because you're here today, listening to me. Somehow you believe in transformation, and that transformation is valuable, and that transformation can do good in the world. If not in the world, at least inside you. And that's why we're here. So I want to talk a little bit about a few things that I think we can do to escalate peace in our lives and to escalate peace around the world. And there are two spiritual concepts, skills, capacities, practices, I'm not sure what to call them, but two things that I believe can help us escalate peace in our lives. And I'm going to give you the answers right up front. Awareness and surrender. Hear those two things today, and my work will be done. Awareness and surrender. And I want to give you the answers right now. Why? I learned it from Thich Nhat Hanh. Not personally. But as I was preparing for this message, I turned to one of my favorite books, Peace is Every Step. And in it, he says, please don't wait. I'm paraphrasing. The quote isn't exact, but it's close to this. Please don't wait to finish this book before finding peace. Peace is available every moment. So don't wait until the end of my talk to find peace. It's available here right now through awareness and surrender. Not that those are the only answers, but they're important ones. And I want to talk a little bit about them today. So I want you to think in your mind, just close your eyes, and think back to a time when you were truly, truly happy. Where were you? Who were you with? What were the circumstances of that happiness? But just a time when you really felt happy. Live there for a second. Remember that. Now open your eyes. You don't necessarily have to leave that place. If you'd like to stay, stay. First and foremost, there was an opportunity for you to just remember what happiness feels like. I hope you found a good spot in your memory. But I have a question for you. You don't have to answer it. I mean, you can raise your hand if you want to. But how many of you, at the time, when this moment in time when you felt happy, how many of you were aware at the moment that you were happy? Some of you? Maybe some of you not? I'm going to hazard a guess. Often, when we're happy, we don't know it until after the fact. That is, I look back on my life and I see a moment in time and I'm like, wow, I was happy then. That was such a happy time. And yet, in the moment when I was living that, I didn't know. I didn't know I was happy. As I was preparing for this, and I was planning on asking you guys that question, I asked myself that question. I have a couple of good moments in my life. There have been a few. One I particularly remember was sort of a period of time. I was in grad school studying theater, which I love. And we had just had our oldest son, Kaylor. I mean, we had Kaylor during my first semester of grad school, and it was insane. It was insanity. In fact, one of my advisors, before I came into Penn State, I studied at Penn State. Before I came into Penn State, at my interview to sort of be accepted into the program, we were talking about life, and she said, as long as you don't have a baby in your first year of grad school, you'll be all right. Literally that night is when I got home and Jordan revealed the fact that she was pregnant. And so, yes, we had a baby in the first semester of grad school. And I was so tired all the time. Jordan was too. I'm not claiming that it was any harder for me. But we were taking care of Kaylor, learning how to be new parents. Meanwhile, I was a teaching assistant and trying to do grad school while I was also preparing my directing projects that I had to rehearse and direct and present. And it was insane, and I was so tired all the time. But I look back at that time, and I was so happy. So happy. And I knew I was tired, but I didn't always know I was happy until I looked back at it, until I observed it. There were times when I could take a moment, take a breath, and just be happy in that moment. But most of the time, I didn't realize it until after the fact. And it reminds me of this very wise quote from a famous philosopher, Andy Bernard from The Office. And Andy Bernard says, "I wish there was a way to know when you're in the good old days before you've left them." Isn't that sometimes how you feel about some of these happy moments in your life? They were the good old days. And if only you knew it when you were having them, you would have appreciated every moment. And that's why awareness is so important. We talked about awareness. That's that first answer that I'm trying to give you for finding peace. And we'll get to peace. I know we're talking about happiness, but we'll get to peace. But awareness. A lot of times, understanding your happiness requires being aware that you are happy. Do you hear that? In order to know you're happy, it requires awareness. You must observe the fact that you are happy. And in order to do that, it requires awareness. And that's what we're talking about. Awakening is something that is involved in almost every spiritual tradition you can think of. But awakening to the truth, awakening to the miracle of existence, awakening to this moment in time and recognizing that you are alive. And that in that awareness of your aliveness, there can exist happiness. And you can be aware of it and taste it and savor it while you have it, not after the fact. Do you see the power of that awareness? And so awareness is something that we want to nurture, that we want to practice, that we want to become good at, because it will allow us to appreciate what we have when we have it. And then we won't have to wait until after the fact to remember that we were happy once, because we will be happy now. And the now is really all we ever have. The now is all we ever have. Every moment in your life, good, bad, or ugly, that you've ever had, happened in a present moment. And every moment that you will ever have, good, bad, or ugly, will happen in a present moment. We might as well live there and allow ourselves to observe, see, experience with the fullness of our faculties, with full presence. With full presence in that moment. So we meditate, right? Isn't that sort of the key thing? When you want awareness, when you want awakening, we meditate. We pray, we meditate. That is a spiritual practice that we must use in order to do what? Well, usually it's to turn off your brain. Because your brain, your thinking, is one of the key obstacles that gets in the way of the nowness of experience. Because thinking can often, not always, but most of the time, leads us to the future, something to worry about or even plan for, or to the past, something to regret, or something to yearn for, like the happiness you used to have, which I just made you do. My point is, the thinking can get in the way of that. And meditation is a way to turn that thinking off so that you can experience the nowness of life in its pure form, without judgment, without preconception, but simply experiencing it now in and of itself. And that is true awareness, and that is awakening, and that is something that is accessible to you now without any other knowledge than trying it. What does it feel like to be in the nowness, in the right now, in the present? It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. And what we tend to do in our lives, because thinking takes up so much of our lives, you know that voice that never stops? Thinking takes up so much of our lives that we have to make time to meditate. We have to make time to be present. We have to build space in our lives to do that. And that's really important to do, because in order to get good at something, like being present, it requires practice. Here's the thing, though. Rather than making it a goal to set aside meditation time every day, I would like to adjust that goal, or suggest that you adjust that goal. Rather than making time to be present, I encourage you to practice presence in everything you do, so much so that you will be so good at it that instead you will have to schedule time to think. So that you are present in every moment, and once in a while, because thinking is important. We need to do it. This is a tool in our head that we need to use. The trouble is, it isn't us. It is a tool that we use, but it isn't who we are. It isn't the true breadth, depth, and strength of our fullness. It is simply a tool that we use to get on through life. And it's a wonderful tool. But let's schedule time to think and spend the rest of the time being. And that will begin to lead you to this peace that we keep talking about. Now, a part of being present, let me say it differently. People who are in love, who fall in love, when you fall in love, if you've ever fallen in love, I hope you've had the experience at least once. But falling in love generates an extreme sense of awareness. I heard somebody on YouTube, I wish I could tell you who, but somebody said that falling in love is like taking the red pill. Do we know about the red pill? In the Matrix, when Neo is, presented with this opportunity to awaken, to free himself from the bondage of the machine world, right? Morpheus offers him two pills, the red pill and the blue pill. Now, the blue pill puts him back asleep. He can go back and just be plugged back into the Matrix, and he'll never know any of this happened. But the red pill is the pill of awakening. And Morpheus promises only the truth. But when you take that red pill, you are awake, and you understand who you are, what the truth of your existence really is. And when we fall in love, I believe we take that red pill just a little bit, because, maybe not just a little bit, maybe a lot of it. Because when you're in love, you are so present. When you're with that person that you've fallen in love with, you are present with them. You appreciate them. You want to be with them. You ignore all of the external elements of your life, and you just lose yourself in the moment of being together. And that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. That's a little bit why I was so happy back in grad school. I was in love with a little baby that came into our lives. I was in love with my work as a director. I was directing Waiting for Godot and, all of these amazing plays that were just so juicy and delightful. So I was in love. And so I felt present. I felt alive. And the beautiful thing about being in love, well, let me say it this way. Being in love makes you aware. But awareness makes you in love. As you embrace this idea of awareness in your life, You will begin to fall in love with life. Fall in love with the moment. Fall in love with being right here, right now. Fall in love with these yellow chairs and this podium and the people next to you and the fans spinning. You will fall in love with this moment. So awareness and being in love are like two sides of the same coin. And you can use either to get there. You can use either to get to the other. So when you find yourself in love, let it remind you to be aware. And when you are aware, let it lead you to love. And I think when you do that, the beautiful thing about being present in this moment, because we think of this moment as such a small thing, it's just the now, it's just right now. But being present in this moment, when you inhabit this moment, you inhabit eternity. Because eternity is not an amount of time. It is the experience of being one. I'll leave that for now. You can meditate on that. But we're talking about peace here. And we talked a little bit about happiness, about those moments when you remembered happiness. And I believe that peace is larger than happiness. Peace, in fact, transcends happiness. That is, it is the bowl that contains happiness. It is the foundation upon which happiness is built and therefore greater than happiness. And you're like, well, Matt, I'd still prefer to be happy. I get that. But there is no promise anywhere in any spiritual tradition that happiness is permanent. It is not permanent. Peace, however, can be permanent. Because peace transcends circumstance. It's hard for happiness to transcend circumstance. When crappy things are happening, when the world is on fire, it is hard to be happy about that. My good friend and his wife and 2 daughters lost their home. It's gone. And all their belongings, all of their things, they're gone. It's hard to be happy about that. But peace is possible. So let's do the exercise again. Think back to the last time you really felt deep peace. Go there in your body if you can. Let your senses remind you where you were. What were you seeing? What were you feeling? Hearing? Smelling? Maybe even tasting? Now, you can come back if you want to. If you, I won't blame you if you stay. But I'm willing to bet that a few of you, as you felt those moments of peace, that deep, deep peace, that those times may not have been happiness. I'll tell you, as I was thinking about this, it reminded me of a time in my life. My grandmother had died. This was years and years ago, and I was probably a freshman in college. I believe I was a freshman. And my grandmother died. And we decided, or I don't know who decided, but I was nominated to sing her favorite hymn at the funeral, How Great Thou Art. And I got to admit, it was hard. It was hard to sing that song, and I felt tense and uncomfortable, and yet I think I did a pretty good job, and everybody was crying. But the thing was, I couldn't cry, because I knew that if I did, there was no singing that song. And so then after I sang that song, my dad came up to me, he hugged me, and he said, "You can let go now. He said, "You can let go now." And like that, I turned into a waterfall of tears because I'd been holding it together. I'd been holding it together for that whole day, morning, the whole time before, because I was nervous about singing, and I just couldn't feel the loss of my grandmother until that time, until my dad said, "You can let go now." And once that happened, I cried for I don't know how long, but my dad just held me. He was good at that. And then, peace. Not happiness. Oh no, peace. And I remember, and I observed it while I was having it. And that's part of what was beautiful about this moment, is we went to my aunt's house. We had these soft rolls, ham, and macaroni salad, which I didn't really like. But I just sat there in her kitchen, all of my family, her family, like my cousins, aunts and uncles, my brothers, my mom and dad, and whoever else happened to be there, I don't really remember. But it was such deep and satisfying peace in the midst of deep and heartrending sorrow. And so that peace, I believe, came as a result of surrender. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Because I'm going to give you another moment when I had some peace. And this was very recent. A couple of weeks ago, I flew out to Missouri. I was making a movie out there. And I went out for a location scout. And on the way in, the wind was insane. I was flying in. And the wind was, I don't think it was as bad as the other night. But it was rough. And the airplane was, the turbulence was absolutely mind-bogglingly large. I've never been in a plane where the turbulence was that big. We were dropping, it was like a roller coaster. And for the first time ever in my life, I thought, I'm not sure we're going to make it through this. I really thought, I think we might go down. I'm in a giant hunk of machinery traveling at 500 miles an hour, thousands of miles in the air, and the wind was toying with us like friggin' a toy. And I thought, this might be it. I really thought that this might be it. And what's interesting to me, which I didn't expect, not that I was planning this one way or the other, but what came over me was intense peace. Because there was some moments of fear for sure. And then I sat in the moment, and sat in the chair, and I just thought, well, if I'm going down, there's not one thing I can do about it. And I surrendered to the moment. And then came peace. After the surrender came peace. And it was enlightening a little bit. And I thought, well, maybe this is how I'll face death, I hope. That I will face death with this degree of peace. But I thought, it's going to be okay. I'll either go or I won't. And it's okay. So, let me tell you another story about surrender. And this also happened recently. Some of you may know that there are some fires in Los Angeles. Some big fires. And like I said, we've had some friends that are dealing with some bigger losses than we are. Our fence blew down and cracked open our sprinkler system and started flooding. So we just turned off the water. It was okay. Everything was just fine. But there were some moments, which I'm sure all of you experienced, or many of you may have experienced, where we were scared. And we were like, are we going to have to evacuate? How close are these fires? And we decided as a family to get together and sort of discuss, what do we do? And in order to help ourselves feel sort of as in control as possible, we decided to pack up. Even though we weren't under evacuation, we decided to pack up and be ready to go just in case. And it brought up some really interesting questions Because we only have, our van. We recently lost our van, so now we just have 2 little sedans. We used to have a big old minivan. And we started asking the question, what do we bring? Aside from some clothes and whatever, is there anything that we need to bring? And it was really illuminating that the things we wanted to bring had nothing to do with value on a monetary level, but had everything to do with personal meaning, with memory. And so we decided to pack some photo albums and other journals and other things that were irreplaceable. But even then, as we had some conversations, and most of this conversation I was having with my wife, but we were having some conversations, and we decided that even those elements that we wanted to bring were really only triggers for memories that already lived inside of us. And that we are the key. And so we took a stroll down hypothetical lane, and we talked about, I don't think I talked about it with you, but Mommy and I talked about it. But we talked about what would happen if we left and came back and our house was gone. What would we do? We just strolled down that hypothetical lane and decided that the only thing we could do is surrender. That we would stand in the rubble and cling to each other. And be grateful that the most important things in the house, the 5 of us, were safe. And that everything else we could let go of. Not that we wouldn't be sad, but peace is available if you surrender. And the beautiful thing that came as we strolled down that little sort of hypothetical was that out of the rubble came enormous creativity. Because we thought, well, if that were to happen, we would start over again and we could be deliberate with every choice. Everything that we bring back into our lives, we could be deliberate about that choice. And you start to recognize the creative power of destruction. And that actually, forest fires are a natural part of the life cycle of a forest. And that burning of the old gives way to new. And while it is painful, and I do not want to minimize anybody's loss at this time, but there is great beauty in what can be born out of that loss. And it all depends upon surrender. And that with that surrender, you will not find happiness, but you might find peace. So I want to end with one of my favorite authors, Eckhart Tolle, from The Power of Now, which I think is pertinent to what we're experiencing in this time and place right now. Whenever any kind of disaster strikes, or something goes seriously wrong, illness, disability, loss of home or fortune, or of a socially defined identity, breakup of a close relationship, death or suffering of a loved one, or your own impending death, know that there is another side to it. That you are just one step away from something incredible. That one step is called surrender. I do not mean to say that you will become happy in that situation. You will not. But fear and pain will become transmuted into an inner peace and serenity that come from a very deep place, from the unmanifested itself. It is the peace of God which passes understanding. Compared to that, happiness is quite a shallow thing. With this radiant peace comes the realization, not on the level of mind, but within the depth of your being, that you are indestructible, immortal. This is not a belief. It is absolute certainty that needs no external evidence or proof from some secondary source. I believe with awareness and surrender, you can find that peace that surpasses understanding. And people will see you in the midst of sorrow And they will not understand why you have peace. It will surpass understanding. And as you transform yourself with awareness and with surrender, you will transcend circumstance. You will overcome the world. And as you do, others will follow. And you will be an agent of escalating peace.